Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Hello, hello, hello. Last week on this show, Becoming Stoic with Benny, the Stoic Padawan, we were discussing the four virtues of Stoicism. And we kind of dove into wisdom. Wisdom seemed to be the topic that we ended up on. And this week on Twitter, X, I did a poll on which of the four virtues do you seem to have the most trouble with? And it's a 2-day poll that I did, and it's still running. But right now, temperance seems to be in the lead. Temperance seems to be the one that people have the most trouble with. So I think we'll probably end up starting today on that. Now, also on X, if you notice those that go into spaces, where the spaces are at, it's usually in purple, and you can see all the spaces that are listed. When I go live on here, it actually comes up in pink. And if you click on it, it takes you to the live show. And if you're on Twitter, I have it up on my phone, so I can also watch it on my phone as we do the broadcast. And if you're on Twitter, if you enter into the chat, there's a good chance I might see it on here. And if I can, and if you have a question, I'll try to bring it up. Now, with that said, let's get to Benny. Hello, Benny. How are you doing today?
Hey, Paul. I'm doing well. How about you?
Doing good. Hit 10,000 followers on X. I tell ya, I never thought that day would come.
Yeah, congratulations. And everybody listening, give Paul a follow if you haven't already. But I guess, that's a lot less people now because you hit 10K. But yeah, that's a big milestone. Congrats. That's a big one.
It is. Thank you. And thank you for being a part of it. I mean, I've met so many wonderful people on X. I go to so many of the different spaces, and the thing that I've seen on spaces with a lot of people is that they tend to follow a certain clique. Like the writers, they only stick in the writer spaces for the most part. People that are in politics, they stick into political spaces. People that are on there that just like to have conversation, just have conversational spaces. And there's nothing wrong with all these spaces. But I like to go into all of them. I hit spirituality, stoicism, political, writing, and I even go into some from other countries. There's some spaces that come up from Iran, from Ukraine, from Russia, from countries in Africa. And they talk about so many different topics, and I learn about so many different cultures also from around the world. Spaces is such a huge tool, and I just wish people would tune into more things and broaden their horizons.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a bit guilty of what you said. I go usually into Stoic spaces. I host 4 of them, more or less now at the moment, or 3, and then this. But yeah, whenever I can, I join the spaces. Especially some of them are after our space, and it's nice to just join in. But being back in Europe, the time difference, a lot of these interesting things are, a lot of these interesting topics are in the middle of the night. So it's just something that give and take. It's but I agree. There's so many interesting topics, so many interesting conversations, and it's good to just go in and listen and chime in if you feel like it. But it's a great platform. It's a really great platform to get your voice heard and for people to know who you are. So yeah, great.
Yes. I love it. And of course, you and Bryce, you both do Stoic Spaces on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Could you let everybody know what time those are and which ones are which? I always seem to forget. I think you're on Wednesday and Bryce is on Saturday.
Yeah, so we kind of mix up. So on Wednesday, I'm the host and Bryce is the co-host. That's the Stoic space. So we talk about just daily topics, general things that we can encounter in life. And we look at it through a Stoic lens. That starts at 11 a.m. Pacific. Both of them start at 11 a.m. Pacific. And then on Saturday, that's the Stoic workshop where Bryce is the host and I'm the co-host. And we're now going through Seneca's moral letters to Lucilius. So I think we just did letter 16. So this has been, I think, week 11. Bryce put it at week 11, and before we did Marcus Aurelius, the Meditations, and we did the Epictetus, the handbook. So it's a really interesting space. I love it, And as you said, I just go to, even if I wasn't the host, I would go there anyway and just enjoy the conversation, add something. But I'm fortunate enough to be able to host them and add my 2 cents and my kind of style to it. So I like that. And yeah, the same with this. For me, this is just a really good way to express myself and to also to keep myself sharp with the knowledge, right? Because you have to, if you want to host something, you need to know about it. And I've grown so much more because of that. So yeah, I like it.
Excellent. Okay, so for our viewers and all that, if you could please give them a rundown on what it means to become Stoic and kind of tap into the 4 virtues that we're going to discuss today.
Yeah, good call. And Stoicism. A lot of people have a wrong conceptual idea about Stoicism, that if you become a Stoic, you are a robot, an unemotional being that just, with a wall around itself, crashes through everything. But that's not the case, right? I think you become more in tune with your emotions, more in tune with you are. And one of the biggest things that Stoics say is to live in accordance with nature. Well, how do you do that? You need to know yourself very, very well and to really examine everything. So Stoicism is basically, it's a Hellenistic philosophy, from 2,000 years ago. It kind of stems from the Cynics, who had virtue as the good, the supreme good, living a virtuous life. And then Zeno, who was the founder of Stoicism, he looked at other philosophies, the academics, the Megarians, from Socrates and Aristotle and Plato, and he just said, okay, you know what? Virtue is the only good, but there's a lot of things that are like preferred indifferences. So instead of living like a cynic, which means dog, they were living on the streets with a cloak and a cup, and they're doing obscene things in public. Well, he said, okay, you know what? I can still have a good life. I prefer to be healthy than to be ill. I prefer to be wealthy than to have no money, right? And so you have some preferences, but they shouldn't drag you down. They shouldn't be those things that you get attached to and that you become a slave to. That's the word that they use, right? Not to become a slave to your desires, to your wants. So a lot of people, they start with the dichotomy of control. They say Stoicism, what do you control, what can't you control? But the biggest thing is to live virtuous, right? To live morally right and to live in accordance with your nature and the nature in general. So, and then we have all these tips and tricks, like what is your control, preferred indifferences, all these things. But basically, Stoicism is a way to lead a peaceful life. That is the outcome that you want to apply. So I think that is kind of a synopsis. And then if we look at the virtues, we have wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage. Last week we did wisdom, kind of getting all the knowledge you want, making sure that you apply it. We went into that one really deep. So I would recommend people to go back and, watch that video if you want. And then we have the others. And as you said, temperance is one of those that came out in the poll. And a lot of people are struggling with, including me, right? I have with temperance is something that I struggle with food, with just doing things. Even, for example, on a platform like X, I could just go in and just have a period of time where I just do, this is everything I do. And then suddenly I kind of burn out. So I have to kind of keep it in moderation. And I think that why, the virtues are really well thought out system, the 4 virtues, and you can see them throughout different, in Christianity, the cardinal virtues. So you have different ways that they come back. And that's kind of my, little take, and we're going to go through all the others. I think maybe today or maybe in the next few weeks. But I don't know if you wanted to add something, your thoughts to that. And
no, you did awesome and all that. For me, I think. Oh, I don't know which one is the toughest for me. I kind of work on all of them. I think the hardest one mentally for me is justice, because I see things in a way, and I feel that everybody should be, acting in accordance. I think everybody should be loving and kind and honest and stuff like that. And it's not for me to be critical of other people. And what happens is that I want more extreme forms of justice for people that act out not in kind,
Mm-hmm.
and so for me, the mental aspect of it is the difficult part. But in everyday activity, I do fine. I think temperance then in everyday activity is probably the hardest for me. It's like when I excuse me, when I get hungry and I make that meal, and it's like, oh, I would love to have this, this, and this, and this. And sometimes I'll fill up that plate and it's just like, oh, and then because I eat a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm someone that eats a lot. And one of the things that I've been doing is cutting back on how much I eat. I am
Mm-hmm.
working really hard on limiting, like when I make a sandwich and all that. I've even got some videos out there where I make a sandwich, and um, now I'm trying to make a sandwich, So, then of course, I'll have like a baked potato with it, and instead of having like three potatoes, I'm now trying to only do one potato. So for me, the hardest part is food right now. So I'm working on
Mm-hmm.
the food aspect. But I know that there's other people that, and I'm guilty of this myself. You get money in your pocket and it burns a hole through it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're not wise in saving up your money, and I think wisdom plays a part in that.
Yeah.
Over the years you become wiser, and it's just like, instead of spending when I get it, why don't I just save it back and utilize it for if I need it for something else, or make plans on to where if I want something, I can get it and still have some in reserve.
Yeah.
So I think when I think temperance and wisdom go hand in hand. So I
Yeah.
think it's good that we go from wisdom to temperance.
And I think as wisdom is kind of the overarching one. I think they can be, and it's interesting because whomever you speak to, they will say, you know what, temperance is needed for all, right? No, you need courage, right? You need courage to act on everything, right? Oh, you need justice to make sure that you do the right action, and that's why they are so great at being the virtues, because you need them all for living well. And you
Yes.
need, and that's why I see them as kind of the first principles of morally correct behavior. And as you went talked about, justice, a lot of people see justice as, the legal system, right? What we have,
Right.
um, yeah, but it's about being fair, right? It's about being fair to the situation and to everybody around it. Sometimes that means making decisions that not everybody agrees with, but that's the fair thing, right? And even with good and bad, sometimes that means like what we think is good and bad isn't really good and bad in the big picture. So fair a justice is a bigger one that we can tap into as well. But as you were talking about temperance, it was like listening to myself. With food, I can eat so much. I can eat an entire plate, and then after I ask myself, why did I do this? So I kind of now finish a plate, and then I'd wait about 20 minutes, and that usually gives me kind of that hunger feeling, sets it aside, so I can relax myself a little bit. I eat my plate, and then kind of the hunger goes away. So there's a practices about it. But one of the ways that I really had to apply temperance was with alcohol. And some people, they might say that's not, I quit drinking alcohol completely because I know myself. I know what the repercussions are and where it goes. So I said, you know what? People say, if you live moderate life, if you live a life in moderation, you should be able to have a drink here or there. I agree. If that's what you can do, I can't, right? So again, what we said, you need to know yourself, and if your limit is zero, then that's it. Then and there's no moderation in that sense. So for me, that was a decision that I took. But if you are able to, moderate, have a glass or two or here or no, and just be able to control it, hey, perfect. But I know I can't. So again, temperance is about kind of that golden mean of Aristotle, where where you have everything in the middle. That's pretty much what temperance is. But still, we need to learn to apply it for ourselves. As you said, with food, look at the things that you struggle with. Some people have it with social media. Me, I can't deny that I'm also a lot on my phone, a lot of these things, but I enjoy it, right? But I could do less. I agree. That's something that I could do. Less. I still need to find temperance. That's why it's something that I struggle with as well, and it's good to kind of look into it.
Yes, yes. And here's the thing, because you brought up alcohol. I spent 20 years in the casino industry. Okay. And as most people that go into that industry, especially into the table games aspect of it, um, you learn how to deal these games, and then you think you can come up with a system to beat these games. It's the natural process. And what happens is you start going out to the other casinos, and you now start gambling. And with gambling comes drinking. In this industry, you meet a lot of people, and there's drugs in this industry. Okay. I became an alcoholic. Now, I was always somebody that was, at a young age, I've always drank, and going into this business, I got more involved in drugs also. And I became a habitual drug user and an alcoholic and somebody that was throwing paychecks away gambling. And on April 3rd, 1993, I had a long conversation with myself in the mirror. And that is basically a huge turning point in my life, because I quit drinking, I quit doing drugs, I got clean, and I became a better human being. And like yourself and all that, who you said you can't even have one drink. I can. I have. I would say since April 3rd of 1993, alcohol's probably touched my tongue maybe 5 times. All 5 of those times were different celebratory reasons, like my daughter getting married or something like that. And I would take and touch it one time, and that would be it. It'd be like one drink, I've had mine, I sit it down, and I just kind of walk away from it. And before you know it, I'm leaving the atmosphere because I now want to drink more. And because I recognize that I want to drink more, I know I have to walk away. In 2011, I was in an accident, and they put me on medication, morphine, Percocet, highly addictive drugs. And after about 10 days, I quit taking all of them because I liked them. I wanted them. And I told my wife, I can't do this. I can't do the painkillers. I can't do it, because if I do, I will become addicted. I will get lost in them, and there will be no recovery for me. So I take no pain medication. So the wisdom and the temperance both come into play here. I know me, and I know what will happen. And then the temperance of, I can't do that. I have to restrain myself. So self-restraint. Now, people will say moderation. Self-restraint is that moderation. And if my self-restraint says 0 is the number, that's my moderation, 0.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that story. And I think it's a story of hope for a lot of people who are, struggling with these addictions, that they can see that one can overcome it, right? That it's something that you can overcome. So that's amazing to share that. I think a lot of people, want to hear that, especially that it's not just with alcohol, but, as you said, with drugs and with medication as well. People usually trust medication, and they say, oh, my doctor prescribes it, so it's got to be good. But then you don't think about the way how you can get addicted to it. So that's something that for me it gives me peace of mind to give that restriction of 0, because I have that same if I drink one, it's not like I can't control myself, but it's really difficult, and I want that next one, and I want that next one, and if I start going, then it's all overboard. So for me, it's just a matter of peace of mind. I say, okay, 0, and that's it. It's a very easy number to hold up, and then I can enjoy myself a lot better. So I think the virtue of temperance, if we boil it down to where it all comes from, it's from knowing yourself and
Yes.
being, disciplined, but very much knowing yourself, like these are my weaknesses, but also my strengths, right? So if you know that you have some weaknesses with substances or with behavior, then it's better to just, stay away from it until the moment where you have fortified that behavior in such a manner where you can say, okay, maybe now I can slowly go back. But it's a slippery slope, right? I think it's a difficult one to kind of go back and use that a little bit. But that's a great story to share, especially with a topic like temperance, and how people can really easily fall into these things without even knowing it. And then before you really know it, it's too late. But the fact that you went through it and with the pain medication said, I've got to stay away from this, you feel those alarm bells go off, right? So I like this too much. This is not going to go well. I've got to really take care. I've got to really, keep my mind on sharp here, and then use that wisdom, right? As you said, apply the knowledge that you have.
Right. And, it also takes courage.
Mm-hmm.
And I think courage is a strong backer of temperance, along with wisdom. I want to show how these three come into play in relation to what I was just talking about, for like what I went through, and it'll probably be applicable to what you went through, because it takes courage to stand up to yourself.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people think that courage is running out there in harm's way, like, running into the burning building and saving somebody. That takes courage. Standing up to yourself takes courage. Okay? Because I want to drink. I like what it does to me. I like what it does for me. But I also don't like the results of it, the aftermath of it. So I have to stand up to myself and say, I don't want this for me any longer. And that takes courage. And you have to apply the wisdom that you know that if I continue to do this, this is where I'm going to go. So then the temperance comes in, is that I've made up my mind and I'm not going to do it. So I think all three are really, really strong, especially when temperance has an effect on your willpower in relation to things that could control you if you allow them. And I think that's another part of the essence of the equation, is what things can control you, that because like certain drugs, they cause a physical addiction versus some things cause a mental addiction. And we were talking about like social media. Okay. That's not a physical addiction. That's a mental addiction. And if you become mentally addicted to it, you now have to stop scrolling. You have to stand up to yourself and say, man, I am spending 16 hours a day on here, and I really need to stop. And unfortunately, I spend 16 hours a day on here, but this is what I do. So I have to actually stop myself. Like at the end of the day, when I am done and my interactions for what I'm doing are done, I now have to decide, do I want to go into a space with somebody and talk about a political issue or something, or do I want to step away and give my mind a rest and go to something else? Yeah. Because I find myself catching those impulses of, okay, I gotta go into a space. I gotta find a space. Where's that space? Where's that space? And I have to step back and go, Paul, do I really need to get into another space? Do I really need to do that? I've already talked about this. I've already talked about that. I could step in and say hi, but I know if I step in and say hi, I'm now going to get entangled in the conversation. So time to turn the phone off. Yeah. And that's what I try to do almost every night. About 7 p.m. my time, I try to turn the phone off and step away.
Nice. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I do less spaces now, is because I know that if I get into a good one, I'm going to stay there for a long time, right? So, and if I want, then I commit. If I do things, I want to do them well. So And to add the virtue of justice to this, you can ask yourself, is this being just to myself, right? If you with the addictions, with the things that you do, you say, am I doing the best for myself? So with justice, the fairness, that also applies to, that's where the questions come from, right? That's where you ask yourself, if you evaluate your behavior, you can ask yourself, is this being just to who I am? Is this being just to my life? But I love how you added the courage there, because especially with something like alcohol, right? You go to a party and you tell your friends, I'm not going to drink today. All the questions you get, the strange looks, they ask you like, is something wrong?
Yeah.
And that is the problem with alcohol. Like, I've had a lot of friends, like, I'm from the Netherlands, right? So smoking marijuana has been legal for pretty much all the time. So a lot of people, a lot of my friends smoked it. I don't like it. It gives me a paranoid feeling. I have tried it, because it's just what, in the Netherlands, it's just what it is. But a lot of people were able to quit it real quick because they just grew up and they said, I don't want to do it anymore. So just a couple of days and that's it. But if you go to a bar with alcohol, it's going to be very, very tough. So you have to have that courage, right? You have to have, especially if you make a big decision to change your life that doesn't fit the social norms that people have set. So I think that is you need to have, first of all, you need to have that understanding. You need to know why you're doing it, to build that backbone. Just always tell yourself, nope, this is the right thing. This is the just thing for myself. And then you have to apply that courage to actually go out and do it, because it's all nice in your head, right? And that's the thing with philosophy as well. How I see it, it needs to be applied. It's really nice to talk about it. It's really nice to write about it. It's really nice to read about it. But at the end of the day, if you really want to make it stick, do it. And that's where the courage comes into play. That's where you got to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And no matter what the opinions are, I'm doing this for myself. And I asked a question the other day. It's like, okay, if you want to be in a relationship, a lot of people, they seek for that life partner, the partner of life, out of fear of being alone or because of the social norms. But the primary thing is to be content with yourself, and that also takes courage, right? To make sure that, hey, I am fine with myself. I am good with myself. I am, if I spend a day with myself, that's great. I prefer, perhaps to spend time with other people, but that's not the case now. So again, with temperance and courage, they are closely linked, because temperance is about action. And if you want to do the right action, you need to have that courage to step out and say, and especially to tell people. I think that is it's easy. And this is a quote by, I think it's Seneca. Seneca probably said it. I think so. He said, it's easy not to drink when you're alone, but the real test when you drink and you see people lying on the floor, I think he uses, puking and drinking. And if you can still stay sober in those situations, that's the real test, right? That's where you can really see how far you've gotten. Maybe that's not where you are right now at the beginning. If you're listening and you're thinking, no, I've got to do, okay, take it easy. But at one point, that is the real test, where if you can be with people. And I was working on a festival a few months ago, and people around me were drinking. And I had these moments where I was like, oh, I would love to have a little beer right now. And I was like, nope. And what I do then, and I think it's kind of a Stoic trick, it's that negative visualization, where in my head, I kind of picture it. I just picture one beer and I picture another, and then I wake up the next morning and I feel bad, and I feel bad about myself, about everything. And so that is kind of what I do. And that mental picture really helps me not to drink. I say, okay, I know the slippery slope, and that stops me from taking that one beer. And I think that is a great test to see how far you are in your journey, to see, you have these little steps. And if you can be around people who do the thing that you wish to stop doing, and you can still be fine, that is but as you said, it takes courage. And I think if we look at, temperance, we really need courage to apply it.
Yes, yes. And it's funny because when I got clean, I went back home and I stayed with my parents for a while. And I told them and all that I was going to go get a job in a casino. And they're just like, shouldn't you just stay out of that? You're recovering from all this. And I said, if I'm truly recovered, I can walk in there and not have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. I can go in there and watch other people drink and not have a problem. And if I can't do that, then there's no sense in me continuing on, because everywhere I go, there's always going to be alcohol. No matter what I do, there's always going to be somebody wanting to go out for a drink. What? I'm not supposed to have friends? I'm not supposed to associate with people? What? You're telling me that no matter where I go, I can't be in a house with alcohol? I can't live like that. So I went and got a job right back into the casino and all that, and did not have a problem with it. I would say that the hardest problem that I had with it is when my wife passed away. My urges to want to drink. She just passed away in January of 2022, and for about, I'd say, 2 to 3 months, it was really, really hard to not pick up that bottle. I mean, I wanted to, because I wanted to go away. So for me, it took reaching out to people and having conversations to get me to a point to where I no longer want that bottle again, because that's, again, where the mindset can go. So again, mental health plays a part in it. And I think living by these Stoic virtues helped with that, because if I wouldn't have utilized all those, and again, I wasn't even, I'm not someone that was living those virtues. I was only familiar with those virtues. Okay. And if not for having that in my life, I think there's a chance that I could have gone the other way. And we have Bryce. He's got a comment. Temperance is primarily about balance, but a key point that was mentioned is voluntary self-restraint. I condition and strengthen my mind through voluntary practices involving self-restraint / denial. Exactly. And it's all about the mindset. So I personally think that the four virtues are great for mental health also.
Yeah. And I think Bryce points out a really good point, right? You've got to want this yourself. And
Yes.
as I was in traveling over the last few months, and at the beginning of the year, I was in Mexico, and there was a lovely elderly lady. She was 88. She came from Florida, Peru originally, and her son had problems with these things, and she went to a lot of these clinics, and they told her, listen, if he doesn't want to do this by himself, you can send him in here, but he's going to go back.
Yep.
He does have to want it himself. So I think what Bryce pointed out there, it has to come from you, right? You have to want it, and I think that sometimes that is the difficult part of this. It is the difficult part, right? And people say Stoicism isn't really a viable philosophy because it's difficult. I say that's exactly why it is a good philosophy, but you have to want to put it into practice.
Right.
And I agree. If what you said, you have to. The virtues give you kind of a guideline. They give you some parameters, some key points, some kind of hints to see, hey, this is where you're going astray, right? This is where you're not really doing the best thing that you could be doing for yourself. So I'm glad that, and I've heard your story before, and it's an inspiring story. It's a sad story, but it shows you the resilience that you can have, right? And that's why I think what you're doing with these shows on the spaces is amazing, to set that example for others, right? And then you can see that something can come out of these things, right? Something, you can share the story and you can help other people. But even those who listen, they have to want to do it themselves. I think that that's where it starts.
Yes. Yes. I've had a lot of friends that were alcoholics / and or drug users. And I've had people want me to reach out to them like, Paul, you can convince them to stop. And I'm just like, no, I can't. No, I can give them sound advice, but until they want to stop. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing about these virtues. Okay. If you don't want to apply them, you're not going to. It, Bryce just said it. You have to want to do that. You have to want to live a stoic lifestyle. You have to want to live that the aspects of courage and temperance and wisdom and justice. You have to want to live by those virtues. It's like with religion. If you want to live by those virtues, you have to want to do it, And I see that there's a lot of people that the idea sounds good, and they might make attempts at it, no matter what it is, whatever your ideology, philosophy, belief system is that you try to live by, that has a structure of obedience to it. People don't want to be obedient to a system, and again, it comes back to that courage of stepping up and having that self strength. And it goes back to what I've said before and all that, self-serving versus serving self. Okay. Because if you're self-serving, it's all about the desires, and it doesn't matter what your ideology is. If I want that, I'm going to get it. I need that. I'm going to have it. I don't care if it goes against my belief system. I want it. You're not living your ideology that you said that you live by. You're only utilizing it then as a tool to try to say you're something when you're not. Okay? I myself, I try to live it, and I would say probably about 2015 is where all of this truly started to sink in on me, where I truly started to live it. I mean, really put it all into practice of how I want to live my life. And I've been doing a lot of things, working on a lot of things. I was a smoker for a long time. You will see me vape in here. I no longer smoke cigarettes. And the vape, I've reduced the amount of nicotine. This is harder. I've done drugs. I've done drugs. I've done a lot of drugs. This is the hardest thing that I've ever had to battle with. And me wanting to quit smoking, I've tried many times, and it's really, really difficult. It truly is. And I know there's people that have gone cold turkey. They were able to do it. They were able to occupy their time with something else. For me, being able to go to this and my next order that I have coming in, no nicotine. So I'm going to eliminate the nicotine. And eventually, once that, again, I got the psychological aspect of hitting this. I'm going to keep hitting it. I do it during the show. But down the road, it'll no longer be an addiction. It'll simply be a habit. And then I have to work on breaking the habit, and I won't have to battle the addiction.
Yeah, and we got a close friend who did the exact same structure that you did, right? First go to vaping, reduce the nicotine, and at one point, you kind of get rid of that, and hopefully, at least if it's the habit. But a lot of friends I know can't beat it smoking, because it's just so addictive. And that's when you were listening, it's kind of ironic, maybe paradoxical, that Stoicism talks about the virtues, and one of them is temperance, and Bryce pointed out it's balance. Yet when you apply Stoicism, there is no moderation, right? There's only one way, and it needs to be applied at all the time. So it's kind of, you're saying, okay, you've got to live in moderation, but not when it comes to Stoicism. When it comes to Stoicism, it's you have to be on guard at every moment, every aspect of the life. And that is how the Stoics look at, the wise person, the one who has all the knowledge, who applies this perfectly, and that's not who we are, right? So we can be a little bit compassionate with ourselves. We can be a little bit kind to ourselves, especially when we try to apply something as temperance. If you have a relapse, you say, okay, but you can always have the next moment. And that's why, your show is in the moment. And that is perfect for Stoicism. If you've made a mistake, acknowledge it, say that was your mistake, get back on get back in the program, get back with it. And that's why people say, Stoicism, you can't apply it because it's so difficult. It is. But you can do it if you really want to, right? And if it's something that you say that this is my life, but you have to apply it. And I think that is, when I was listening to you talk, is like, okay, but there is no middle ground. And one of the things that I think makes people kind of hesitant to do it is because there are no excuses, right? Stoicism gives you no excuse not to be your best self. Why you don't want to do it? It's because there's things that you're making the wrong decisions, right? You're making decisions that are not good for yourself. So there are no excuses. While in other ways, if you don't go full in, you can always find an excuse. And a lot of people use stoicism to hide behind. There's a lot of like in the masculinity movement and the and all these other, they say, oh, you got to be stoic. But if you really listen to what they say, that's not stoicism. That's just a front where they can say, I can justify my behavior because of this. Stoicism tells you, no, there is no justification. You need to be virtuous. You need to live morally right, not just to the world around you, but to yourself first. And I think that that is where it kind of becomes a paradox, because you can't be temperate when it goes to stoicism. You have to be on it all the time and put it into practice. So I think that that was a an interesting point to make. But yeah, with when we talk about temperance and balance, sometimes you need to go full on first and forget about the balance. And as you said, slowly break it down to where you can find that balance.
Right. Exactly. It's knowing yourself and doing what you can to accomplish what you want to accomplish, knowing how you are and what you'll do. And it's funny because Bryce says voluntarily doing difficult, uncomfortable things are core Stoic practices. Cold showers, fasting, etc., are things that teach us about ourselves and give perspectives. This helps internal balance. And the reason why I say funny is because Bryce and I had a conversation months ago and all that. It was a brief conversation, and he was talking about fasting. That's the topic that we got on. And I was just like, oh man, there ain't no way I can fast. No way. It's just not going to happen. I love food way too much. Not going to do it. Not going to happen. Since that conversation, once a week on Sundays, I skip my last meal. I don't have anything to eat after 6 p.m. Where after 6 p.m., I usually fix myself up a nice plate. After 6 p.m., I don't do that on Sundays. So I know it's not fasting like Bryce would want me to fast, but for me, this is a huge step. I mean, the fact that I am reducing the size of my meals itself is huge, but the only reason why I even decided to start doing that is because of the conversation I had with Bryce. And it's like, I can do this. I can't do it right now. I can't do it. I mentally and physically cannot do it. But it's like any other training. It's just like, if I told you right now, go and give me 500 push-ups, can you give me 500 push-ups? No. But I'm willing to bet that if I told you that, hey, one day I'd like to see you give me 500 push-ups, I bet if you actually took it upon yourself that down the road, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, you could probably give me 500 push-ups. I can't give Bryce that 24-hour fast. I can't do it. But I am working on getting to a point to where I might be able to do that. And if I follow what I've set up for myself, there will come a time I will be able to do that 24-hour fast.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point. And I've heard Bryce at these 72-hour fasts, and these longer fasts, and it is inspirational to hear someone talk about it. And I think what we see then is someone setting an example of something that is possible, right? Someone not telling you to do it, because there is a not really a danger, but it is, if people tell you to do stuff, then usually you find resistance. You find that friction where you say, hey, someone is telling me what to do. I'm not going to do this. But if someone is showing you that it's possible, that it has benefits, that's why I think setting the right example is the best way, instead of teaching or telling people what to do. So I agree with the fasting, and I did the Ramadan twice, not drinking and eating during the day, which was something that I never thought I could do, but it was a good challenge. I like to see the challenge. But if you do those things, I think it's also important to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why is this important to me? Why do I want to, fast, right? Is it to test yourself, or is it something that really benefits me? Is it something that will have long lasting effects, right? Because a lot of the times people hear about these things and they jump on it, but it's not theirs. It is not really something that fits them. And I think that's why we need to be careful to adopt all these things, but ask yourself why, and does this suit me? Bryce here, he can do the fasting. It works for him. I'm not sure if it would work for me. I could try, I could do it, but then ask myself, is this just something to prove myself now, or am I going to do it for a longer stretch of time? And that's the same with dieting. People give you, oh, you should do keto, you should do this, you should do that. Okay, I can try it, but I need to listen to myself. And that's the same thing with, then we get to the justice virtue, right? Then we say, am I being just to myself, or am I forcing myself into a corner really bad? And Bryce brought up the involuntary discomfort, or the voluntary discomfort. And that's a good thing to try it, right? That's good to do those things and tell yourself, I can do this, I can handle these things. If really push comes to shove, I can handle this. That's why when I did the Ramadan, and this was in Spain during the summer, the days were long, it was hot, and I couldn't drink, but I did it. And I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to do it for myself. People didn't notice, and I was in the office and people would put like a brownie next to me. I was like, oh man, that smells really good, but no, I'm doing this. And it showed me what my body was, capable of. And I had some health issues before, which gave me some doubt physically. But this was something, okay, I can do this if I do it the right way. But that is the question you've got to ask yourself. Why am I doing this? And does it work for me? Experiment, try these things. If people tell you this works for me, yeah, great. But if it doesn't, and again, that's when we come to the temperance part, because some people, they go overboard. You read it the same on X and on these social media platforms. They say, you want to be rich, you want to be famous, you want to have a great, do this and this and this and this, all these steps, and you're going to have it. But if that doesn't work for you, if you are pushing yourself over your limits, then at one point it's going to come and, you're going to face the consequences and you're going to be burnt out, and that's it. So I think it's really important to ask yourself why and see where, is this something that really works for me?
Right. Well, and here's the thing. When Bryce was talking to me about it, it's not like he was telling me I had to do it or anything.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me about, what he was doing and why it was beneficial to him. And that conversation resonated with me because I got to thinking and all that. I do live out here in the desert. And what if I got stranded or something happened? I'm walking my dog and I fall down a ravine or something and I break my leg. And what if I have to go a day or two without food? How would I be? I can't do that now. That's not possible. But now if I learn how to fast and I can get to where I can fast for 24 hours, if something were to happen to me, I can survive it. I can make it through it. Psychologically, I mean, physically, I could probably survive it against my own will. But psychologically, it would mess me up. But now, if I train for something like this, then I won't be distressed. Oh, what am I going to do for food? Because trust me, if I fell down out in the desert right now, my first thoughts are, what am I going to do for food? I am going to starve out here. I mean, that would mess me up, and instantly I would be hungry, wanting a double cheeseburger or something. I mean, instantly, that's where my mind is going to go, is just thinking about food, and that's going to be my downfall. So I saw it as, if I trained myself to do this, it could actually be beneficial.
Yeah.
So it provides a benefit. So Bryce, thank you, my brother. Thank you. I'm working on it, and I will have that day where I can turn around and eventually it'll be, I'll skip 2 meals, and then I'll skip 3, and then I'll skip 4, and then I'll skip 5. I eat a lot. Like I said, I eat a lot. I eat about 7 times a day. Okay. But for me, it's about knocking a meal out on a day and getting it to where eventually I can go a whole day without eating. And I think when I can do that, that will be a tremendous accomplishment for me. And I'm looking forward to it. And again, it takes the temperance, it takes the wisdom, because I had to look up, see what the benefits were, see how it could harm me, stuff like that. And the courage to say, hey, I can do it. And now here I am trying to work myself up into a position to fast for a 24-hour period.
And it also, adds to your peace of mind. Because if you know what you're capable of, and I think there is I haven't read it, I need to find it, but it's an essay by Seneca where he advises this senior official or whatever politician who has a court case coming up and he is afraid to go to jail. And he says, picture yourself, maybe even go to your basement and sleep on the floor in the cold. Make sure that you see those conditions where you live, where you think you're going to go in a prison, and see if you can last, right? See if you can deal with those things. So by doing those involuntary comforts, you can test yourself and say, if the worst things would happen to me, I can deal with it. For example, if you are afraid of losing your money and living in poverty, live of less. That's what I'm doing. I'm living a minimal life because I don't want a lot of things. I don't even know, I don't have a lot of clothes. I hate shopping, or I not hate it, but I'm just not good at it. My sisters tell me, I'm not supposed to go shopping alone because I'm a taste. It's not very bad. I always come back with clothes that don't match. But that's just something with me. But if you know that you can live of little, then the fear of not having any money or not having enough will, not disappear, but it will go down because you know that you can survive it. You know that you can last on little. So I think that is an important kind of lesson of this involuntary discomfort, where it teaches you with fasting, right? So if you think, oh, if I'm going to be stranded in the desert and you've done a 24-hour fast, you know that you can deal with it. You know that at least the 24 hours I've dealt with it. And then it's the mindset shift. So that's why it also is a very good kind of Stoic practice to lean into that, to test yourself, to look at your fears, to look at, and Seneca says we suffer more in imagination than we do in reality. So Go try it. If you have certain things that keep you up at night, if you have certain things, try it, experiment, see what happens. If you are in a similar situation or a simulated situation, and see how you can deal with it.
Yes. And, it comes into play for a lot of things, claustrophobia. I didn't realize I was claustrophobic until I had to go in for an MRI. And before my injury, I was a bounty hunter. I've gone into crawl spaces tracking people down and with no fear. And for some reason, when they put me in that MRI, I had a huge panic attack, and the claustrophobia kicked in. Again, it's more of a control aspect, claustrophobia, and it really did a number on me for a while, and I've been working on that also. It's difficult. I'll go into different little spaces and stuff like that and push myself. So anything that you have that you're dealing with, whether it's a traumatic thing, whether it's an addiction, whether it's a habit, whatever the case is, if you want to, if you so choose mentally to try to beat these things that are holding you back in some shape, way, form, whatever, you can battle them. You can take them on, but you have to want to. And that's where the courage comes in, and the temperance. They both play hand in hand. And of course, the wisdom, knowing more about it, looking it up, finding out what it is that's afflicting you or causing you to act a certain way or do things, and try to know more about it and change those behaviors, change those habits. But again, you have to want to do it.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. That's where it all starts. And the same thing. And when you listen to people explain kind of the journey of Stoicism, philosophy, spirituality, it's usually when they hit kind of rock bottom, right? When you hit that obstacle that you think is so high you can't even surmount. And the same for me, and if you look at all the different stories, and everybody has their own trigger, their own thing that in life that they face is so difficult. And that is usually that moment where that necessity of improving yourself becomes so big that you feel, I've got to do this, right? That want doesn't even become something active that you got to tell yourself. It's something that you feel. It's something that drives you. It's something that, okay, this works. And I was, with a good friend of mine. He brought me back to reading. He gave me a lot of good titles to read. And at one point I said, I'm kind of going through this existential crisis. To this, like, I'm just asking myself all these questions. I don't know what's going on. And then I read, an introduction to existentialism where the Stoics came around, and I saw it and I was like, this speaks to me. So, that's kind of the first thing. If you read and you find something that speaks to you, stick with it. But that's where that drive came from for me. That's like, okay, I've got to do this. This is, and I didn't even tell myself. It was just innate. I was just like, okay, this is my journey now, and I'm sticking to it. And as you said, put it into practice, because that's where it really matters.
Yes. Putting it into practice. Key words right there. Putting it into practice. Doesn't matter what you believe in this world. It doesn't matter what your ideology, political belief, life essence, whatever it is that you believe in or want to believe in. It all comes down to putting it into practice. You want to be a great violinist. You want to be a pianist. You want to be an artist. You want to be a YouTuber. You want to be somebody that gets promoted at work. You want to be that person that's recognized for, doing this or doing that. Whatever it is, you got to put it into practice. You got to put it into practice. And here we have Bryce coming in one more time. It's about my will and my intellect ruling my desires and impulses. Stoics are in control of such things. If fasting isn't your thing, find other ways to deny habitual behavior. Build the muscle of control. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Build the muscle of control.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's good to have Bryce, chiming in here with his knowledge, and his wisdom. And again, that's why it's good to hear from other people what they do, listen to them, and then look at yourself. Can I apply it, or is this going to help me, benefit me? And especially what Bryce pointed out, to deny those habitual behaviors that you want to reduce, maybe even expel. Find your way, experiment. I think that is also one of the beauty parts of this journey that you're on. It is, you can experiment as long as you keep it in a controlled manner, as long as you keep it again with the virtues. But try stuff. That's the only way how you can find out more about yourself. That's where the information comes from. So I think that is a great point to make, as Bryce there at the end. To, even if fasting isn't your thing, try it. And if it's not, then at least you said I tried it, and maybe I can make a different way to make it work.
Yeah. And again, build the muscle of control. Accept what you want to change. Know what it is, and put it into practice. We have Danny Brook. Discipline. It implies great teaching. To be a disciple of exercising that control muscle. Yes. So
yeah, and when we talk about temperance, we can all go back to discipline, right? Temperance, discipline, courage. It takes discipline to be tempered, and it takes discipline to have your actions in the right way. So I think that is a great point there to add.
Yes. I think next week and all that we'll discuss this a little further, go more into justice and tap on courage a little bit more. Who knows? Maybe bring them all back into it and all that. I think this was a great show. Again, I love this. I wanted to tell everybody thank you for participating. I appreciate it. Bryce, love you in the comments. And we had Danny Brook in the comments on Twitter. Thank you. I appreciate that. Remember, in the moment, Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Writers Retreat, which is usually on Tuesdays, will not be starting up this week. We'll restart back up more than likely next week. And Wednesday, we have The Flow with Shadow Fox and Lee Two Hawks. Thursday, we have Who Wrote the Bill with Nick Nunley and Jack Cunningham. Friday, we have The Vellum with T. Paul Wolfrick. Great topic. We covered mental health last week. We're probably going to be covering more on mental health and writing this week. And then on Saturday, Democratic Philosophy. Last week, we just tore up the Presidential Records Act and what it was. and who knows what we'll be talking about this next Saturday. So feel free to check us out. And if you have ideas for something that you want to hear on a show, or maybe something that becomes a weekly thing, feel free to DM me. And if you have ideas about this show, Becoming Stoic with Benny, the Stoic Padawan, feel free to DM us and all that. Let us know. Throw us some ideas. We'll do our best to try to get into whatever things that you want to hear about. So let us know. Any closing thoughts, Benny?
No, I think it was a great conversation, and I've learned a lot. And thank you for sharing, all your stories. I think that is something that people like to hear. And again, I think it's important to set the right example, and you're doing that, right? To share your stories, to be vulnerable, and to show that how you have progressed now and how you're living. So I think you're a perfect example to living virtuous and living more in temperance. So no, I think it was a good conversation, and see where it takes us next week.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for sharing your stories too. I mean, you're doing the same thing. You're putting in the work effort, and I'm quite amazed at all the things that you have going on. Maybe one of these weeks you can share more into some of those other things that you have in the background that you're working on. I'm looking forward to a lot of the stuff that you and Bryce have going on. Oh my God! So yes, stoicism. Yes, yes, yes. The four virtues. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you, everybody. And remember, be kind, be happy, and make good things come your way. Thank you.